This is how to do the entire Astra Malorum Easter egg on solo. You can do this by yourself or with any number of players, and this video is going to help you from the very start of the game to getting it done all the way to the boss fight. Now, I will say in terms of raw difficulty, it's pretty similar to Ashes of the Damned, but I do think this Easter egg actually will be a little bit easier for most players, except for some certain stages of the boss fight, which we'll talk about, but the map is much smaller, meaning it's a lot more condensed, and you should have no trouble completing this Easter egg once you know what to do, but there are a couple of tricky steps, so I'm going to walk you through all of them. Compared to Ashes of the Damned, your loadout does matter a little bit more. Now, you don't have to run exactly what I'm using, like in terms of guns or even gobblegums, but these will make your life a lot easier if you do have access to them, and I recommend bringing in strong gobblegums if you think that you're going to be able to complete this one. Ether Shroud is also a really good field upgrade to have for most of this main quest. And if you find the video helpful, just leave a like and consider subscribing. I would love to hit 1 million one day. Okay, so as soon as you begin the game in the spawn room, you don't need to do anything really out of the ordinary until the power's on. And you can either use Gobblegum to give yourself some extra points in the early game, or you can just push rounds to get enough points to open up the entire map. You want to follow the objective markers that tell you to explore the observatory. Once you reach this area, you should see this telescope and this oculus, and you'll initiate this, and then it will tell you to find 2 different components. The first one is around the other side of the map in the library over here, and it's actually sitting on one of these dead bodies on this upper staircase floor. Pick up that first harmonic component, and then the second one is actually closer to spawn in the luminarium, and it's on that body just there. Then you can take those 2 pieces over to the oculus and repair it. This should start a lockdown sequence in which you need to defend the Pack-a-Punch machine, and you have to cover it for about a minute because zombies will try to destroy the oculus, and if they destroy it, you'll fail it, of course, and have to try it again. But this is a pretty easy lockdown. You can do this very early in the game, and like I said, they will all be marked with objective locations up until this point. So getting Pack-a-Punch is pretty easy and is step 1 of this Easter egg, and obviously step 2 is acquiring the Wonder Weapon. Getting this map's Wonder Weapon can be a little bit tricky, but I'm going to show you how to do this efficiently. So in the spawn, if you shoot the gear shift where Mr. Peaks is in the old Tessie truck, it should spit out a car battery for you. Just go ahead and pick that up, and then pass rounds until you get an Oscar to spawn in, these patrol robots. When an Oscar spawns in, you don't need to kill the entire enemy, just shoot the UFO surrounding him and charging his shield, and that should allow you to pick up a damaged drone UFO part. Once you have that second piece, I recommend immediately coming over here into the museum, and then coming over to this glass display box and picking up the rock saw right there. Once you have these 3 items, the next thing we can do is take ourselves around the spawn area and sort of like around the left and right side of the museum and look for a sparking lantern like this. It can be pretty much any lantern, but it's really easy to find because it's flickering very dramatically. So once you shoot your flickering lantern, you'll get wires, and then come over to the arsenal station and put cryo freeze on one of your weapons. This will now enable us to shoot the Ethereum crystals around the front and courtyard sections of the map, and every single time you shoot one of these crystals with cryo freeze, it should spit out an absolute 0 fragment. We need 3 of these in total to initiate a rocket launch. Now, there are plenty of these to be found, and they do respawn pretty frequently, but you are going to want to make sure you have 3 of these in total before attempting this next step. But once you have 3 absolute 0 fragments, head back into the museum and get yet again another Oscar patrol bot. Once he's in here, you can come over to the side of this rocket display and interact with the button on the side of the frame. When you do that, you want to make sure Oscar is in the path of the rocket fire launch when it counts down to 0. When you do that correctly, the screen should flash white and it'll look exactly like that. Oscar will disappear and you'll be good. To make sure the next part works, come over to the Luminarium and don't turn on the trap, but interact with this battery piece right here, and that should put on the UFO piece. Don't run the trap yet, but make sure that piece has been added to the frame before you do anything. Next, get another Oscar to spawn into the room, and once he walks in, activate the trap. You won't get any lasers, but the room should be flickering on and off, and the lights will have the electricity pulled from them. All you need to do is just run around and survive. You don't even need to shoot Oscar. I don't even think you need to break his shields. You just simply need to run out the clock until this progress bar over here on the side fully charges, and Oscar's battery overcharges as well. Once that's done, you should get yet another result where the screen flashes white, and you see it look like this, place where he just completely disappears. Once you've done that step correctly, we have one final Oscar step to go, and this is probably the most fun one. Now, in the Pack-a-Punch room, there are these pipes right here that are emanating steam. They make a lot of sound, and you can also see them, and there's quite a bit of smoke coming from them. These can be on the lower floor, the middle floor, or even the upper floor in the portal room or even above. Something important to keep in mind is that the steam spots spawn only one at a time, so you need to shoot one before the next location appears, and this makes it really easy, so just listen and look out for these, and they're really not too hard to find. Once you shoot your last one, the telescope should switch positions like this, and then you'll know that you've done that step successfully. Now, you'll need to get yet another Oscar, and the way that I really do this is I'll pull them into the room, and you can see exactly how I pull this off, but you can walk them into where they get pretty close to the Pack-a-Punch machine, but not quite there yet. Interact with these binoculars on the left side of the piano, and then you'll enter a telescope in which you need to find the sun right here. And then once you hover over the sun, it'll kick you out and then initiate this sunbeam laser trap. This will be on for about a minute, so you have some time, but you need to walk Oscar into this beam. And once again, I don't think you need to break his shields or anything like that, but you'll just want to make sure that he gets a good solid walk through this entire sunbeam. And if you're doing this right, you should see this animation right here where he kind of gets like stuck in the laser, goes completely like bright, and then just explodes, and he should spit out the LGM-1 wonder weapon for you. This is basically step one of initializing the Easter egg. So, and it is absolutely required for a lot of the steps, so you need to make sure that you take it, whether you're playing solo or co-op. Now that we have the wonder weapon in hand, we can actually start with the main quest steps of the Easter egg. So I also recommend, as you're going throughout these steps and doing these processes, you should do the TED trials whenever they're available, especially if you've already used a perkaholic, because getting these completed will give you eternal perks so that if you accidentally die or go down or something, you'll be able to keep these, and they're pretty much vital to have in solo, in my opinion. This next step is pretty fun, but it can be pretty tricky, so you'll need to get another Oscar to spawn into the map, but you don't want to alert him. If you hang out behind Oscar before he's alerted and he's just patrolling, he'll look like this. And as you hang out behind him, he should start talking. He'll be repeating dialogues and people's last words, these, audio files, but you'll just want to hang out right behind him like this and don't alert him, as he will give you some vital information of eliminations that he's had. And specifically, you're looking for elimination 20. This can take quite a while, to be honest. You might have to follow him for at least like a minute or two. Once he starts talking about elimination 20, and specifically from Dr. Thurston, you should be able to get 3 different planets in this recording. As you can see in mine, I get Mercury, Earth, and Venus. I will say having subtitles on helps a ton here, so make sure that they are on in your whole game. But those are my planets, and what you need to do is now assign those a number, and they're numbered in relation to their position from the sun. So I'll have a picture to guide you on screen. Mine was Mercury, Earth, and Venus, so according to their numerical positions from the sun, my code is going to be 1, 3, and 2. And when you input that correctly, you should get a quote like this, knowing that you've done it successfully. And this is a pretty easy step, but it's just kind of getting the codes is rather hard. That should bring down this lift with a body on it that gives you a cryo chamber key. Next, take yourself over to this room just past the museum, and you should be able to take that new item over to this cryopod to unlock it, and then the rock saw we got earlier, if you hold interact with him, you should be able to operate and take out his brain. This will immediately spawn an Oscar, but you don't need to fear him or kill him or anything. Just get the brain and run away, and then head straight back to the Luminarium, where there should be yet another brain inside a jar, but we're going to swap that out with the brain of the guy we just picked up. Interact with the brain once again after you've placed it in, and that should initiate a lockdown sequence that lasts for around a minute. This lockdown does last long enough that the Oscar that spawned in after picking up the brain will indeed follow you here, and he will, come and turn up the pressure a little bit. It might be a little bit tricky in this holdout, but honestly, it's not too bad. I do recommend killing him here if you feel like, the pressure is too much, but you got to hold out for about a minute, just surviving, and then keeping the zombies off the brain as well. Some gobblegum can be helpful here, like insta-kill kills or something like that if you're having trouble on this one, but it's really not too bad of a lockdown if you're relatively set up or even have like a ray gun or something like that. It's not too difficult. Once the lockdown is done, you can pick up the brain, and you're not going to be able to sprint during this time. So I'm going to show you the route that I take here to take the brain to its new location. It doesn't seem to have a decay, so you don't need to worry about it running out of time or anything, but not being able to sprint kind of sucks. So put it in this machine, and then also hold square to interact with the machine and fix the computer, and then it should be displaying some messages, and it will talk about a reading list, and then it will show you a couple of different books. You need to write these down. It's handy to have like a pen and paper or just write them down on your phone, but everything after the reading list you'll want to write down and take note of. Once all of them have been written down, then come back over to the telescope area and interact with this again, but instead of looking at the sun this time, we're looking for Mars. It's basically the only other planet visible in the sky, and then you'll want to look down here for your set of coordinates. You'll see them at the very bottom, and that's actually a code for you. So mine is going to be 5319 because of my coordinates that you saw there. We're going to input that number, whatever that 4-digit code may be, into this upper typewriter here in the Astralis area, and that should activate the next step, which can be a little bit tricky, but I'll explain how this is done. This step is really easy once you know how it works, but it can be a little bit difficult to grasp at first. What you need to know is that there are 3 different walls in this library, and there are 3 corresponding busts, these stone statues. Now, what you need to do with that reading list is look at each wall and see how many times a book from that wall appears on the list. So, for example, in my game, I got on shelf 1, I had the Black Veil and the Moon Directive appear on that computer, and so I'm just going to derive a 2 from that. On this wall, I only had the Witchlight Codex, which is the only book that appears on that wall. And then finally, on this third wall near Stamina Up, I had 2 more books appear from the reading list on this shelf. So basically, my code is 212, given the books that appear on each respective shelf. Now, what you do with this is you need to end the round, because this can only be done at the very beginning of a new round. You need to interact with these statues the proper amount of times that a book from that reading list appears on that wall. So, for example, I'm going to come over here and turn this statue twice because 2 books from the reading list appeared on that wall. This one I'm only going to turn once, and then this final one over here I'm going to then turn twice because 2 books appeared on that wall. Now, if you've done this correctly, the hatch up here should pop open. Like I said, this step is actually really easy once you understand how it works, but it can be a little bit tricky to grasp, but doing it once should give you a good idea of how it just sort of how it runs. But if you're having trouble, basically you just need to understand that each wall has a statue, and there are 3 walls, 3 statues. The amount of times a book appears on that wall is how many times you turn the statue, and it can only be done at the very beginning of a new round. So if you do that correctly, once again, the hatch should open up, and then you need to climb to the top of the ladder to pick up the planetarium, which is the Neptune up there. That's the missing piece you need, and then that will complete the planetarium that's inside the main room. I actually forgot to grab this the first time, so make sure you go and get it, but once you have Neptune, you can start this next step, which is not too bad either. Next, go ahead and place the newly acquired Neptune on that last pole over there, and then now we need to find 3 slips of paper. The first one is right here on the shelf, and it says northeast, and it gives me Neptune. Just take a picture or write down what yours says, and then come over here to the library and look at the other scrap of paper. Mine is Saturn, that says northwest, and the final one is in the Luminarium, and that is Mars, giving me southeast. These pieces of paper are always in the same spots, but it'll probably be a different planet and a different direction. But once you have those written down, all you need to do is shoot those respective planets to line them up with the compass that is the centerpiece of the sun in the room. So as you can see, for example, I'm lining up my Neptune right here to be aligned as closely as you can. It may not be perfect, especially if you get something like northeast. You know, it might not be right exactly on the dot, but get it as close as you can. And once you have all of your planets locked into place, as close as you can make it, you should be able to come back down here and interact with the device, and this will start a lockdown sequence. Now, this one is much harder than defending the brain from earlier. You're going to get an Oscar to spawn, but you cannot kill this one. Don't even try. What you need to do is survive from zombies that get pretty aggressive in here, and you also need to prevent Oscar from sending his UFO devices to destroy the teleporter. That's what they're going to be doing this whole time, so you need to make sure that you're constantly shooting these out of the sky and defending it for about 2 minutes. It's a a pretty long lockdown, so make sure that you don't get overran by zombies and don't let too many UFOs attack the teleporter. Once you successfully defend it, it should go away, Oscar will disappear, and then you'll be automatically pulled right into the teleporter as it is now active, and you'll be sent to a really cool location. You'll be taken to Mars, and when you get here, you'll need to pick up the chamber that holds the brain once more in the center of the room here. Once you have that picked up, again, you won't be able to sprint, but bring it to the top of the staircase and add it to the main machine over here at the top. Interact with it once again. You need to connect it to the machine, so hold to interact, and then once that's connected, that should establish a link between Mars and the normal map, so you can freely go back and forth. But when you're ready, you can interact with the machine once again. You can do this once per round. It should be making a really loud noise, and if it is, you can come outside of the map and shoot these prongs in this order. That is the back right, and then do the back left, and then do the front right, and then the front left. So as you can see, they light up blue. The scarab will travel to the next coil. You'll shoot that front left one, and then finally you'll shoot the one over here on the top just above the teleporter, and that is the final one you need to shoot. And if done correctly, the scarab should fly into the map as such. But you need to keep shooting this to make noise to keep it interested, otherwise it will leave. So you need to shoot this and make noise. It should hover around the room, and you need to wall jump and then pick it up wherever it flies. So once you grabbed the scarab, then you can take it over to the mysterious temple right here and place it on the face. Once that's on, we only really need one more step, and then we're just about ready. Now, this final step is actually super simple, and once again, your phone taking a picture or writing something down will help tremendously here. Come back over to the Pack-a-Punch machine and play this piano, and you'll see these letters and these symbols appear on the screen here. Take note of all of these, including the one where it was blank there and just showing static. You should get 4 symbols in total plus static, making 5 different characters. Again, just write them down. You should have 5 separate ones, and then you'll need to take those characters and then come back over to Mars and then activate all of these, pylons, these pillars that are here. Use the wonder weapon to shoot the prongs that are coming out of the top of it, and if you've done it right, you should see them glowing blue like so. Once you shoot all of these with the wonder weapon, then they will all be initialized, and then what you need to do once they're all turned on is interact with them in a certain order that the organ gave you, with your blank one being the pillar that doesn't appear on your screen here. So obviously my first one right here was the one in game, and you can see me interacting with that. This is my second symbol, and the corresponding pillar is this one. What's tricky is that it kind of crops out some of the symbol. This is my blank one because it didn't appear on the screen for me, but it crops out a little bit of the symbol, which makes it kind of difficult to decipher. But this is the one over here, the corresponding pillar. And then finally, the last one, the plus sign, is over in the corner. I interact with that, and then it is all done. Once you've gotten to this point, make sure before you do anything else, you get boss ready. That means PAP tier 3 on all of the guns you're going to be using. Get Gersh devices, get any kind of mutant injections or anything you want. Make sure you have self-revives. But once you have everything and you're all set up to go, you can interact with the brain to initiate the boss fight. Now, I'm going to try to give you guys some quick and helpful information about each phase of the boss fight because they're all a little bit different. The first phase is honestly the easiest and the most cinematic and the most straightforward. Really, all this is a glorified soul box. You don't need to shoot the boss at all. She will appear from the sky. She's this big skull, but you don't really need to shoot her with your gun at this moment. She'll be shooting you with lasers, and they are, kind of pesky, but they really won't do a ton of damage to you. You just need to kill as many zombies as you can as quickly as possible. You can outrun or even outwalk the laser, but once you fill up a pylon with enough souls, you can initiate the firing sequence here, and that will shoot a laser into the sky, taking off a fair chunk of her health. You're going to repeat this 2 more times after the first one. You'll just continue to kill and collect souls, filling up the soul box, and then once again, cover yourself, maybe throw a Gersh device, use Ether Shroud or something, but go ahead and shoot the laser again, and then bring her down to the ground. This is where it gets more tricky, because now that she's ground-based, she's going to be very aggressive in trying to track you down. This is where it gets very interesting, because now you have to play a lot more nimble. You can no longer afford to stand in one place, and you absolutely, under any circumstances, should not get cornered, otherwise it is pretty much instant death. I like to make these loops around sort of the center, circle, this block around the arena, and then just have the boss chase me as I deal damage. The UFO is pretty good at armor breaking, right? The wonder weapon is good for that. And then I like to use either my MA or a ray gun to hit the critical points, which are marked obviously by the bright blue spot, and you'll get a ton of damage by hitting those crits. I will say the first phase is obviously the easiest here, or I guess this is phase 2. but if you successfully get past the first ground phase, you will then enter phase 3 against the Descendant. This one is a lot trickier because she gets bigger, she throws heavier rocks that deal more damage, and she is a lot more aggressive. You don't want to let her get close by any means because you will get pretty much 1 or 2 shot, which is not fun, and with the anti-gravity, getting hit in the air can pretty much lead into a true combo, so you just want to avoid her at all costs, reposition if you need to, and don't ever get greedy because that can very easily be the end of your game. But phase 3 is pretty challenging, and it might take you a little while, but once you get the armor break in a critical spot, you should be in a good position. She'll do this ground slam where she'll, hit the ground like this, but if you react to it by jumping in the air, you won't take any damage, and this is a really good way for avoiding this move, like just as I've shown there, because that move deals a lot of damage, about 150 health, even if you have armor, I think. So it's pretty big, but yeah, can be very easily avoided just by simply being in the air once they do the slam. You just need to be able to show a lot of patience in this boss fight, and again, not go for too greedy punishes or try to get too much damage at once, and reposition to a safe spot on the map. There's always a safe place. But in phase 4, I don't know if I can honestly say the same. This one is very tricky, I'm not gonna lie. It's pretty much all of phase 3 just turned up even more. It's bigger, it's faster, it's more aggressive, and the problem is the rocks now deal a lingering AoE effect, and this is the most difficult part to deal with because it cuts off a lot of the safe positioning that is so crucial in this boss fight. So if you manage to avoid these rocks, that's great, but you also need to stay out of the lightning that they, have, because they deal a ton of damage just by standing anywhere near that radius. This fight is hard, but if you pretty much apply the same strategy of avoiding, repositioning, and dealing damage for phase 4, you should complete this one as well, but it is going to be quite challenging. I think this is a lot harder in solo than it is in co-op. I will give that a forewarning. Just like Ashes, I think it's easier in co-op, but either way, I think this boss is very doable still, and it's just going to maybe be a little bit more tricky than you probably were expecting. But I'm not going to play the cutscene for you guys. I'm going to let you experience that in game. No spoilers, of course, but I just wanted to make a video showing you how to get to the boss, and now you can approach it in any way you like with some good tips and tricks, and hopefully some pointers to help you defeat this one, because it is a lot of fun. If you don't get it on the first try, don't worry, it's not too bad. Also, Semtexes deal a ton of damage if you can hit them on critical spots, so just keep that in mind. It's very, very good. But anyways, this boss, hopefully you'll be able to overcome this challenge and you'll have a good time. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys soon. Peace.